There's a quiet realization that only begins to settle in as we grow older, as the noise of youth fades and the rhythm of life slows. It's not the fear of dying that weighs on most people's hearts. It's the quiet sorrow of looking back and realizing we spent years being busy, but rarely present. We rushed through time, hoping to catch something, only to discover we were chasing peace, stillness, a simple moment where we truly felt alive. A few years back, I found myself in a hidden temple in the mountains near Shanghai, wrapped in winter mist and pine trees. There lived an elderly monk, nearly 80, who had chosen a life of simplicity. Each morning, just after dawn, he would sit silently by a small wooden window, gazing out over a garden filled with moss, weathered stones, and blossoming plum trees. He barely spoke. Yet one morning, as we sat together, he turned to me and said with a gentle smile, "When I was young, I kept running after time. Now, I see. It was never time that moved. It was me." His voice held no regret, only a quiet awe, as though he had discovered a sacred truth not written in books, but etched in the silent hours of living. And that truth is this: the beauty of life doesn't lie in how long we live, but in how deeply we experience each moment. As we age, we start to notice how the years seem to accelerate. Months blend into seasons. Whole years pass before we've even learned to be present in them. We promise ourselves, "I'll slow down soon, I'll rest, I'll start living someday." But that word, someday, is a gentle thief. It lulls us into comfort while quietly taking the only thing we truly own, now. Buddha once said, "The problem is, you think you have time." He wasn't warning us to panic. He was inviting us to wake up, to remember that time isn't something we possess. It's something that moves through us like a river, not to be gripped, only to be felt. In this video, we'll journey through 13 heartfelt reflections, drawn from Buddhist philosophy, life experiences, and simple truths. Each one will guide us through a different part of being human: how we use our time, where we place our energy, how we nurture our peace, and what it means to truly live. Because this is a deeper and longer reflection, you'll find all the chapter timestamps in the video description. Whether you choose to stay with me for the entire journey or return later to revisit a part that speaks to your heart, you'll always have a place to begin again. So if you're here now, maybe with a quiet cup of tea, take this as your invitation to slow down. There's no rush. You're not late. You're not behind. You're exactly where you need to be. Let's begin. Part 1. Waking up from the illusion of time. When we were children, summers felt infinite, stretched wide like a canvas of golden afternoons and long evenings filled with laughter, discovery, and the music of cicadas. A single day held so much wonder that it seemed to last forever. The scent of sunscreen, the thrill of a bike ride, the soft hush of twilight, they carved themselves into our memory like sacred etchings. But now, as adults, the years feel like they're racing past. Whole seasons dissolve into one another, and suddenly we're flipping through a calendar wondering where the time went. What changed? The Buddha taught that all things are impermanent, but he also warned us that much of what we perceive is shaped by the mind's illusions. Time isn't an external force ticking steadily in the background. It's a feeling, an experience shaped by presence. The more conscious and awake we are in a moment, the richer and slower it feels. But when life becomes repetitive, when we're distracted or stuck in autopilot, time slips past like a shadow. We live, but we don't feel it. I once met a woman named Clara during a quiet weekend retreat in Oregon. She was 78, full of warmth and wisdom. She had raised 4 children, lost her husband, and still volunteered regularly at the local library. Yet as we sat beneath a maple tree beside a glassy lake, sipping tea, she said something that stayed with me. "I don't remember most of my life," she said gently. Not because it didn't happen, but because I wasn't really there. Clara's words struck a chord. How many of us move through our days half asleep? We rise, scroll through headlines, drink our coffee, and drift through conversations that barely scratch the surface. The brain, ever efficient, stops recording the predictable. New experiences light up the mind, but familiar routines blur together. This is why time feels alive when we're falling in love or exploring somewhere new. Our attention is fully present. But when life becomes a loop, awareness fades, and time slips by unnoticed. In Buddhist teachings, this disconnection is sometimes called time blindness, a spiritual sleepwalking through our own lives. The Buddha didn't only teach mindfulness in meditation, he taught mindfulness in every breath, every step. Do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future, he said. Concentrate the mind on the present moment. Simple words, but living them takes gentle effort. We don't need to make grand changes to wake up. Often, it's the smallest shifts that have the deepest effect. Take a different route on your daily walk. Sit in a new spot during breakfast. Try a dish you've never made before. Speak to someone you've never met. These small acts are like pebbles tossed into still water. They ripple through the routine, awakening the mind. Another powerful practice is the art of pausing. Just stop for 10 seconds. Breathe. Feel the texture of your clothing, the pressure of your feet on the floor. Listen to the breeze, the birds, the hum of silence. These tiny pauses throughout the day are like sacred bookmarks in the story of your life. They root you in now, and perhaps most transformative of all, reflect. At the end of each day, take a few moments to write down what you noticed, what moved you, what made you laugh, what made you pause. Even a sentence or two is enough. As a Zen teacher once said, a day without reflection is like a sky without stars. The illusion isn't that time moves too fast. The illusion is that we have no control over it. But presence changes everything. When we're awake, truly awake, a single breath holds the eternity we've been seeking. Because time isn't something we must chase. It's something we are invited to feel. Part 2. What really matters in the end. There comes a moment in life, not loud or dramatic, but quietly persistent, when you start to question the things you once chased. It doesn't always arrive with age. Sometimes it comes on a quiet walk, a sleepless night, or during a sudden pause in the middle of your daily routine. A whisper, really, that asks, what has all this effort been for? I remember meeting a woman named Helen during a hospice volunteer training. She was a retired nurse in her 70s, with a calm voice and eyes that had clearly seen both joy and heartbreak. For decades, she'd worked in delivery rooms and oncology wards, caring for people at the very beginning and very end of life. And now, in her so-called retirement, she chose to sit beside the dying. Not out of obligation, but because she understood that there are truths you only hear in life's final hours. She told me, in all my time with the dying, no one ever wished they had spent more time at work. No one asked for their emails. What they longed for was people, peace, and time they never made room for. That stayed with me, because we spend so much of life running, chasing deadlines, promotions, productivity. We check tasks off lists like trophies, but not everything that screams for our attention actually deserves it. The Buddha taught what he called right view, seeing life clearly, without the distortions of ego or fear. He reminded us that not all actions are meaningful, and not all busyness is noble. Yet we often confuse being busy with being valuable. We move through our days like machines, measuring our worth in hours spent and emails sent. But time, eventually, becomes our greatest teacher. Look back, and you might realize the things you postponed, those quiet dinners, the phone calls you meant to make, the afternoons you could have spent outside but didn't, were the real gold. The missed moments pile up like forgotten gifts. In Buddhist practice, there's a powerful reflection called the 5 remembrances. It teaches, I will age, I will grow ill, I will die. All that I love will one day be separated from me. These aren't meant to frighten, they're meant to wake us up, to gently remind us that this moment is precious precisely because it won't last. One practice that helps bring this truth into focus is something I call the deathbed view. Imagine yourself, decades from now, lying quietly at the end of your life. What memories will fill your heart? Will you remember cleaning the garage or answering late-night emails? Or will it be the time you listened, really listened, to someone you love? The walks at sunset, the quiet forgiveness you finally gave or received? These questions aren't morbid. They are medicine for the soul. They remind us that depth matters more than speed, that connection is worth more than control. But modern life rarely gives us time to reflect. So we must choose to pause. We must become, as the Buddha might say, mindful guardians of our own attention. Try this. Each morning, before you check your phone, before the world comes rushing in, sit with a blank page and ask yourself, if today were my last, what would truly matter? Don't try to be profound. Just write what your heart says. Then carry that answer with you into the day, not just as a thought, but as a compass. The Buddha once said, "Your work is to find your work and to give your whole heart to it." That work isn't just your job title. It could be planting a garden, making someone laugh, comforting a friend, or simply being still and present for the miracle of another sunrise. That is Dharma, the path of a meaningful life. Because in the end, it won't be how much we did that defines us, but how deeply we lived. Not the number of days we filled, but the love and awareness we brought to them. And the most hopeful truth of all, it's never too late to begin living that way, starting today. Part 3, the sacred ground of relationships. There's a particular stillness that surrounds an elder when they speak of friendships that have faded with time. It's not the loud nostalgia of youth remembering parties or laughter in groups. It's softer, slower, a kind of quiet mourning for connections that slipped away, often without warning. Sometimes all they say is, "I wonder how they're doing these days," or "We just lost touch." And sometimes the words that linger longest are, "I wish I'd said more before it was too late." In a small Buddhist gathering in Northern California, I met an elderly man named Roy. He was tall, thoughtful, and moved with the careful grace of someone used to living slowly. One afternoon, during a group talk on forgiveness, he shared a story that felt like a confession. He spoke of his younger brother, someone he hadn't spoken to in over 30 years. A fight had torn them apart. What the argument was about no longer mattered. What remained was the silence that followed. Every week, Roy thought of him. He'd even written letters, many in fact, but never mailed a single one. "I didn't know how," he said. "I didn't have the courage." There was grief in his eyes, but not just for the past. It was the grief of love left unspoken, of time still passing with a door never reopened. Buddhism teaches a timeless truth. Hatred is never ended by hatred. Only love can bring it to a close. And sometimes, the love we fail to express becomes a weight we carry deeper than we realize. Relationships aren't just interactions. They are sacred terrain. Every word we speak, every gesture we offer, is a seed planted in the soil between souls. Some grow into warmth, others into regret. The Buddha taught that our relationships are where karma plays out, not in abstract theories, but in the real moments where we choose to be kind or not, to forgive or not, to stay open or shut down. As we grow older, we begin to feel this more clearly. It's not the number of relationships we've had that matters, but how we showed up for them. Some people bring us joy, some bring us pain, but every person is a mirror, offering us the chance to see who we are and who we still might become. The Buddha's own cousin, Devadatta, betrayed him deeply, and yet the Buddha never repaid harm with harm. He chose instead to stay rooted in compassion, not to condone, but to stay free of bitterness. That choice is one we each face. Think, right now, of someone you've drifted from, a friend, a family member, someone you once shared your life with but now barely recognize. Maybe the door has been closed for years. Maybe words were said that can't be unsaid. But ask yourself, honestly, gently, is there something still worth healing? It doesn't have to be a grand reunion. It can start with a message, a letter, a whispered blessing in silence. You can hold them in your heart with kindness, even if you never speak again. In Buddhist practice, we call this metta, loving kindness. It's the act of sending warmth to another without expecting anything in return. Because relationships are rarely defined by the big gestures. More often, they're made and remade through the smallest things. Remembering a birthday, showing up when it matters, listening without fixing. A simple, "I'm thinking of you," can be more powerful than any apology. And yes, not every bond can be mended. Some wounds remain. But healing doesn't always require the other person. Sometimes peace begins when you choose to let go of the pain you've been carrying. The Dhammapada tells us, better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace. Let's not waste our words on noise. Let's speak only what matters. Let our lives become a quiet offering of presence to those we love, and even to those we've lost along the way. Because in the end, what counts is not how many people we knew, but how deeply we cared. Not the length of connection, but the quality of presence. And it's never too late to sow one more seed of kindness in the sacred space between hearts. Part 4. The gentle wisdom of the aging body. There comes a moment in life when our body begins to speak in new ways, not through strength or agility, but through creaks, pauses, and quiet aches that weren't there before. Rising from a chair becomes a deliberate act. A morning walk feels less like routine and more like a ceremony in awareness. But what if these changes weren't signs of betrayal? What if they were subtle invitations? Whispered messages asking us not to push harder, but to slow down, to pay attention, to offer care. In Buddhism, the body isn't a burden to be overcome. It is our very starting point. The foundation of mindfulness begins with the body. The practice known as kayanupassana invites us to observe the body not with criticism, but with reverence, with a simple inner voice that says, "You've carried me so far. Thank you." At a retreat in Northern California, I met a woman named Grace. She was 74, recently recovering from hip surgery. Most of her life had been spent in motion, teaching yoga, hiking trails, dancing under open skies. But after her surgery, she confessed she felt alien in her own skin. "It was like my body made a decision I wasn't part of," she said. But what happened next was quiet and profound. Over the course of the retreat, Grace stopped trying to force her old strength to return. Instead, she began to soften. Each step with her cane became intentional, each breath a conversation. One morning during walking meditation, she looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "I thought I needed to get strong again, but maybe I just needed to get kind." That shift, from performance to compassion, is where healing begins. The Buddha taught that our bodies are not tools to conquer, but vessels to honor. Temporary, delicate, yet endlessly sacred. When we stop resenting their changes, we begin to hear them more clearly. When was the last time you asked your body what it needed? Truly asked, not commanded or ignored. So often, we treat exhaustion as weakness and discomfort as something to suppress. We rush, push, and demand more as though the body exists only to keep up. But with age, the body's voice grows gentler and clearer. It asks for tenderness, for rest, for attention. As one elder monk said, the body teaches us impermanence every day. The graying hair, the deepening lines, the slower pace, they are not signs of loss, but signs of wisdom. Life is calling us to be more present, not more efficient. One beautiful way to honor the body is through the body scan meditation. Whether lying down or sitting comfortably, bring your awareness to each part of the body, not to judge or change, but to notice. To greet each muscle and joint as you would an old friend. You may find that under the tension lies gratitude. Beneath the discomfort, forgiveness, and yes, movement too can be sacred. You don't need to run a marathon. You don't need to prove anything. A short walk in the morning light. A few gentle stretches before bed. Even standing barefoot on the earth, letting your feet reconnect with the ground. These are rituals of remembrance. They say, I am still here. I still matter. I am still alive. The Buddha once said, to care for the body is a duty. Without it, the mind cannot stay clear. This is not about clinging to youth. It is about cultivating presence. The kind of presence that allows us to be awake for our lives, to meet sorrow and joy, laughter and loss fully. So if your body is softer now, slower, more sensitive, embrace it. Don't see it as something broken, but as a wise guide. It has carried you across the years, through loves gained and lost, through illness, change, and growth. And even now, it rises each day and says, let's go on. Perhaps the most profound act of spiritual courage at this stage of life is not trying to change the body, but loving it exactly as it is. Part 5. The hidden cost of chasing wealth. Somewhere along life's winding road, we pick up a quiet, persistent belief that success is measured in accumulation. A larger house means you've made it. A newer car shows progress. A well-stocked retirement account is your safety net. There's no shame in wanting comfort. But the trouble begins when money stops being a tool and starts becoming our identity. I once spoke with a retired lawyer named Charles. For 40 years, he had lived with laser focus, discipline, prestige, promotions. From the outside, he had it all. But on the day we met, he sat silently beside a garden, staring through the glass. I thought I was building a future, he whispered. But all I built was a cage. That moment stayed with me, because so many of us are unknowingly doing the same. Buddhism never condemned wealth. In fact, the Buddha taught kings and welcomed the support of the wealthy. But he constantly warned about attachment, about the illusion that things can shield us from life's ever-changing nature. The wise don't fear money, but neither do they cling to it. They give, they release, they live lightly. The real question isn't how much you have, but whether it's helping you live more fully or quietly stealing your life away. Many spend their healthiest, most vibrant years in pursuit of income, only to spend that income later trying to buy back what they lost: time, peace, connection. But time isn't like money. It can't be earned, saved, or refunded. And the cruel truth: we never really know how much of it we have left. There's a concept now called time affluence, the sense of having space to enjoy your life. Strangely, studies show the richer people get, the more time poor they often feel. Why? Because more wealth often means more obligations. Bigger homes need upkeep. Luxuries demand attention. Every new possession quietly asks for your energy. A monk once told me, when you buy an object, it also buys a piece of your mind. Spend carefully. Something beautiful happens when we begin to value moments over materials. A slow walk at sunset. A shared laugh over dinner. A spontaneous road trip. These don't depreciate. They deepen. They become the soft glow of memory, the true currency of a meaningful life. I once met an elderly woman who did something remarkable. Each month, instead of buying for herself, she created small moments of joy for others. A surprise coffee for a friend, a bouquet for a neighbor, a donation to someone in need. She told me, "Those moments make me feel wealthier than anything in my jewelry box." This isn't about guilt, it's about freedom. In Buddhist thought, true wealth is spaciousness, the ability to breathe deeply and know that your joy isn't locked behind a price tag. It's the power to say no to what drains you and yes to what feeds your soul. The Buddha once offered simple yet profound financial advice. Live with enough and give away the rest. Not to deprive yourself, but to liberate yourself. Because when you stop gripping money so tightly, you realize it was holding you just as hard. So pause and reflect. What does enough look like for you? If you earned less but lived more, would that be a loss or a gain? Where have you confused being busy with being rich? Because in the end, you won't remember your bank balance. You'll remember how fully you lived, how generously you gave, and how open your heart felt along the way. Part 6. The bloom of creativity in life's autumn. There's a subtle but profound awakening that often begins in the later chapters of life. A return not to ambition, but to artistry. Not the kind driven by performance or pressure, but a soft, soul-deep urge to create simply because we are alive. And yet, too many people over 60 believe this kind of creative spark belongs to someone else. They say, "That's for the young," or "I missed my chance." But the truth, as long as you're breathing, your creativity is breathing too. I met a woman named Martha once, a retired postal worker, mother of 4, who had spent decades rising early, delivering letters, and living humbly. After losing her husband, she found herself alone at 71. One day, she picked up some old cardboard left by a dumpster and began to paint. At first, just shapes, then sunsets, soaring birds, winding roads. Her garage became a gallery of quiet wonder. When I asked if she'd always been a painter, she smiled gently and said, "I think I've always been paying attention. I just didn't know how to answer what I saw." In the Buddhist view, creativity is not some separate skill. It's an extension of presence. Whether you're trimming flowers, sketching in the margins, or humming as you cook, these acts are sacred if done with awareness. Basho, the Zen poet, once wrote, "Spring comes, and the grass grows by itself." In the same way, the grass of your own creativity never stopped growing. It may be tangled, overlooked, or covered in dust, but it's still there, waiting for your care. What often holds us back isn't time, it's fear. Fear of looking foolish, fear that it's too late, fear of being imperfect. But Buddhist wisdom reminds us, now is always the perfect moment. The lotus, after all, blooms from mud. And the later years of life, with all their depth and perspective, are the perfect ground for creativity to flower. Not because you're starting over, but because you've lived enough to create without ego. Maybe you used to sing when no one was listening. Maybe you dreamed of writing poems or dancing under the stars. Maybe your hands ache to shape, to stitch, to sculpt, to tell a story. Let this chapter be your homecoming, not to impress, but to express. Not to win, but to remember who you really are beneath the noise. Even the smallest acts of making carry meaning. Baking bread from a recipe your mother used, planting herbs in reused jars, telling bedtime stories that never make it to paper. These aren't just hobbies, they're sacred offerings. Each one whispers, "I am still here, and I still have beauty to give." And if your first steps feel rusty, awkward, clumsy, unsure, don't stop. Creativity often returns slowly, like a tap that hasn't been turned in years. The early flow might be muddy, but stay with it. Let joy be more important than perfection. As one Buddhist teacher said, "The cracks are what let the light in." You are not behind. You are in a richer season now. Your roots run deep. Your blossoms may be slower, but they carry more fragrance. So dance alone, even if only for the moon. Paint with your fingers. Sing softly while folding the laundry. Write down your memories like prayers on paper. Let your creativity speak, not to the world, but to your own heart. Because in this season, you are not just making art, you are becoming it. Part 7. The gentle power of clear seeing. Clarity is not always loud. It doesn't always arrive like a thunderclap or an epiphany. It often enters quietly, like morning light creeping in through the curtains. With age comes the chance for deeper understanding, not because we've learned everything, but because we're finally willing to look without illusion. Still, wisdom doesn't automatically grow with years. Like a garden, it needs tending, through reflection, awareness, and a willingness to see what lies beneath the surface. In Buddhist teaching, there's a term for the mental fog that clouds our perception, moha, or delusion. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's simply the unconscious habits we never question. But the Buddha offered a way through the haze, vipassana, which means clear, penetrating insight. This isn't just about seeing what's in front of us. It's about seeing through it, to the deeper truth underneath. I once spoke with a woman named Janice, a retired librarian, who shared a shift that transformed her life. "I used to be on autopilot," she said. "When someone upset me, I'd either lash out or retreat into silence. I thought I was choosing, but really I was just reacting." Now, she pauses. She breathes. She asks herself, what's actually true here? And in that pause, she finds freedom. Because most suffering doesn't come from what happens. It comes from how we respond without awareness. We think a thought and assume it's truth. We feel anger and treat it like a command. But the Buddha reminded us that our minds create the world we live in. To live with wisdom, we must interrupt the cycle of reactivity and learn to respond from presence. This becomes especially vital later in life. You might no longer be choosing jobs or chasing milestones, but you're still choosing every day where your attention goes, how you respond to changes in health, how you relate to others, and how you protect your energy. These choices shape your final chapters. There's a beautiful concept in Buddhist psychology called second-order thinking. It asks us to look beyond the immediate effect of a decision and consider what comes next. Saying yes to something today, will it nourish you or drain you later? Avoiding a difficult truth, will it cost you more peace in the long run? Similarly, inverse reflection invites a powerful shift in perspective. Instead of asking, "Why don't I feel peaceful?" we ask, "What in me is keeping peace away?" It's a humbling practice, but it unlocks answers no one else can give. A Dharma teacher once said, "We don't often choose what's wise, we choose what's familiar." And while that might feel uncomfortable at first, it's a doorway to transformation. Because truth, real truth, might unsettle us, but it always clears the fog. So how do we grow this kind of insight? By slowing down, by bringing awareness to ordinary moments, feeling the warmth of water as we wash dishes, listening without the urge to reply, walking with full attention rather than rushing toward a destination. Wisdom is not found in urgency, but in presence. We also begin asking deeper questions. Not, what do I want right now? But, what will truly serve me in the long run? Not, what will make others happy? But, what brings peace to my spirit? And when answers don't come right away, we learn to sit with the not knowing. We trust that truth often comes quietly, not with a shout, but with a whisper. In the end, wisdom isn't about one big, perfect decision. It's woven from 1,000 small choices. When to speak and when to be still. When to give and when to retreat. When to hold on and when to release. Each of these moments becomes a stepping stone toward clarity. So if you're unsure of the road ahead, don't rush. Sit with the uncertainty. Breathe into it. Let your inner waters settle. And from that stillness, a quiet knowing will arise. Not from fear or habit, but from the deep well of wisdom that has always lived inside you, steady and luminous, like a lamp shielded from the wind. Conclusion: living deeply in the time we have. If you're still with me now, still listening, still breathing, then perhaps something within you has shifted. Not in some dramatic way, but quietly, like a curtain drawn back to let in morning light. Maybe it's a softening, a remembering, or maybe just a deeper breath than usual. Whatever it is, know this: it was never about needing more time. It was always about being more present with the time you already have. In these past reflections, we didn't search for ways to stretch the years or escape the realities of aging. We didn't promise a second youth. What we did, again and again, was return to the only place life ever truly exists. Right here, right now, in this unrepeatable moment. The Buddha never asked us to transcend life. He invited us to enter it completely, with clear eyes, an open heart, and the courage to stay awake even when it hurts. And what we've explored, whether it was about our energy, our relationships, or the creativity waiting inside us, is really about one thing: choosing to live with intention, not perfectly, not without difficulty, but with presence. Presence enough to notice the texture of sunlight on your skin. Presence enough to really hear someone's laughter. Presence enough to let your tears fall without shame. Presence enough to feel joy that has no reason and sorrow that needs no fixing. Because that is what a meaningful life is made of. Not the number of years we collect, but the number of moments we're truly awake for. As the Buddha once said, a single moment of awareness is worth more than 100 years lived in distraction. So if you're wondering when to start living fully, the answer isn't someday. It's this breath. And the place isn't out there, it's right here. So today, maybe you do something simple. Sip your tea slowly. Look someone you love in the eyes. Forgive someone, maybe even yourself. Or maybe you just pause long enough to say thank you.